What's up everybody, I'm Tim from Timber Ridge Gifts. This video is going to be a candle making tutorial taking you from start to finish, from raw supplies to finished product, with a lot of great tips along the way. So let's not waste any time, let's start checking out our supplies and get all this put together. So the first place we're going to start is our jars. For this project we're going to be using 16 ounce pint-sized mason jars with the wide mouth lid. So the first thing we need to do is get our jars ready. They look fairly clean coming from the store, and we can assume that they're probably pretty clean. You will occasionally find ones that are dirty. I found chipped glass in a few. I've even found one that had about that much dirty water in it. No idea what that was. So just to be sure, we're going to clean a few up. So we've got our jars cleaned up. The next thing we have to do is figure out how much wax we're going to need. Now the label says 16 ounces, and that's correct. However, we're not going to be filling these all the way up. We've got to leave just a little bit of room at the top for our wick. So because our fill line is going to be a little bit lower, it's not going to be the exact 16 ounces. Since we're the only ones that are going to know where our fill line is, it's up to us to do our own measuring and figure out just exactly what our volume is going to be. Really simple trick to figure that out. All we need is our scale, an empty jar, and a pitcher full of water. We're going to set our empty jar on the scale, go ahead and turn it on and zero it out. And now we're just going to add water up to what our fill line is going to be, and that's going to tell you how much volume this is going to hold. And there we go. Rather than the 16 ounces that this jar is designed to hold, I've got to bring it down just a little bit, and my completed candle is actually going to be 15 ounces. So we've got our jars figured out, 15 ounces, we've got 4 of them. So altogether we're going to need 60 ounces of wax and fragrance oil. Now the wax will be easy, we're just going to use simple measurements for that. We'll get to that in a second. The main thing we're going to have to figure out is our fragrance oil. We can add varying amounts depending on how strong we actually want our candle to be. That is called the fragrance load. Fragrance oil is just a fancy term for whatever percentage of your fragrance oil wax mixture is actually fragrance oil. For these candles we're using Golden Brand's 464, which is going to hold a 12% fragrance load. So for this project we're going to go the full 12%. Now to keep down on waste, here's where we're going to have to do our first bit of math. Now we could just do the full 60 ounces of wax, do our 12% fragrance load. That's going to give us 7.2 ounces of fragrance oil. The only problem is we mix all that together, that gives us 67.2 ounces of mixture. Well, we only have 60 ounces of volume that we can hold, so that'll give us 7.2 ounces of wasted fragrance oil and wax mixture. We don't want that because this stuff's pretty expensive. So to keep down on waste, we want to get this mixture as close to 60 ounces as we can while still staying at the 12% fragrance load. So to do that, we're just going to use some basic math and play with a few numbers. Here's what I mean. So we've got 60 ounces of wax. We'll start with that as our baseline. We got 60 ounces of wax. We want a 12% fragrance load. We'll convert that to decimals, which is 0.12. So 60 times 0.12 gives us 7.2. Well, that added together gives us 67.2, which is no good. Now there's probably actually an easier conversion formula that somebody a lot smarter than me can teach you. But with nothing more than a high school diploma from the Georgia Public Education System, we're just going to use a little bit of process of elimination and work our way backwards. So we started with 60, we knew that wouldn't work, so let's try 59. 59 times 0.12 gives us 7.08. Add that back together is 66.08. Still not good enough, still a lot of waste. So let's try again. We can do the same thing with 58, 57, 56. Chances are it's still going to put us over, so let's try 55 ounces. 55 times 0.12 gives us 6.6. We'll add that back together. And that gives us 61.6 ounces. Almost there. Let's try that one more time. We're going to try it with 54 ounces this time. So 54 times 0.12 gives us 6.48. Add all that back together, and that gives us 60.48 ounces. Pretty close. We could break that down into further fractions if we wanted to get it super exact, but that's going to get us really close without a whole lot of waste, and it's going to give us just a tiny bit in case we spill something. So we've got our next two ingredients set. We've got our wax, we've got our fragrance oil. We know that for these 4 candles we're going to need 54 ounces of wax and 6.4 ounces of fragrance oil. So our next step is go ahead and start melting our wax down. A couple of different ways we can do that. Option 1, we can use a double boiler on our stove. We're going to fill just about an inch of water in that. Set our pouring pitcher with the wax in it. Melt it down on the stove top like that. But for today's project we're going to be using my Presto kitchen kettle with the pouring spout built in. For this house project, this is going to be able to hold all of our wax, and it's going to melt it down a lot quicker. You can either buy them like this, I will leave links, or you can actually make your own. I've got a great tutorial video showing you how to do that, so if you want to see that, just check out the link right there. So we've decided on this. Now our next step is to go ahead and measure out our wax. We're going to bring our scale back up, we're going to set our pot on our scale, zero it off again. Now we're just going to add our 54 ounces of wax. Alright, and that's got us at exactly 54. So we're going to set this aside, we're going to go ahead and plug this in, let this start melting down, and move on to our next step. And while this is melting down, we're going to be sure to monitor our temperatures. Temperatures are very important, especially when you're working with soil wax. We're going to go ahead and insert our thermometer. We're just going to keep an eye on that while it melts. We're actually using what's called the Alex method. I explained that in pretty good detail in this video right here, but just a quick synopsis of it. We're going to heat our wax to around 150, add our fragrance oil and our dye. We're going to let it cool to around 100 before we pour our candles. And now it's time to add our wicks. Now this is the first area where people can really get tripped up, simply because every container, fragrance oil, and wax combination could potentially use a different size wick. Standard sizes will generally work with each combination, but occasionally you're going to run into that one combination that's going to need to burn a little bit hotter or burn not quite as hot, and you're going to have to either wick up or wick down. I've got some great wick testing videos that explain that a lot further if you guys want to check those out on my channel. We don't have time to get into all that in this video, so I've already done the measuring and testing and figured out which wicks we're going to need, so I'm just going to throw those at you as freebies today. So we got two basic kind of wicks. We've got our cotton wicks and we've got our wooden wicks. We're going to be seeing both of those today. Let's start with our cotton wicks. Now these containers are 3 1/4 inch wide, which is right around the area where you might want to start considering using a double wick. Now this is what makes this container such a popular size, because we're right on the edge, so we don't have to double wick if we don't want to. But if we want that look, we can certainly double wick and get away with it. Now I've already done the testing and measuring, so I know for each of these, for the single wick, we're going to be using an Eco 14. And for the double wick, we're going to be using 2 Eco 4s. So now all that's left is go ahead and set our wicks. To do that, it's really simple. You can do it by hand, or you can use a commercial wick setter. These are a really neat tool. They come in really handy, especially if you're doing a large volume of candles. If you guys want to see more of these, just check out the link right there. But to use it, all we're going to do is just load our wick in it. Now we're going to stick it to the bottom of our jar. A couple different ways we can do that. We can use commercial wick stickers, or you can just use a hot glue gun. We're going to go ahead and use our wick sticker. It automatically centers it. And that is a perfectly centered wick. But if we wanted to do it by hand, we can just kind of improvise, make our own wick setter. This is a hard plastic straw out of a drinking tumbler. Hollowed out ink pen will work as well too. And all we have to do to center these is just draw a straight line across the center of the bottom. Measure equal distances from the sides and the center. Go ahead and mark it, which I've already done. And now we can just hit those marks with our wicks. And those are perfectly centered as well. Now for our wooden wicks, again, we're right at the edge where we can do double or single. And I've already done the testing and measuring, so I'll give you the sizes for free. Now these are sized by their width and their thickness. So for the single wick, we're going to use a 1/2 inch wide at 0.04 inch thickness. We're going to go ahead and load it into the wick clip. Again, we can use our wick stickers or our hot glue gun. And we don't need any special tool for these because they don't move, so we can just line this up. Already got our center marked. Press it into place, and it's ready to go. Now for our double wooden wicks, we're going to be using 1/4 inch wicks at 0.02 inch thickness. We've already got the bottom of our jar marked, so we're just going to set these into place. Now that our wicks are in place, we're going to go ahead and stabilize them just to make sure they stay put. We're just going to be using commercial wick bars. You can really use anything for these. Popsicle sticks, ink pens, clothespins, pretty much anything that's going to hold it straight and in place. But if you're going to be doing this quite a bit, these commercial wick bars are fairly inexpensive. Definitely something worth investing in. We've got our cotton wicks set in place. Now for our wooden wicks, we don't really need wick bars because they're pretty well going to stay in place. But for the smaller ones, we are going to put them on there just in case they happen to move around a little bit. And now we don't have to worry about them moving around. We're getting closer to time to pour. Our wax is melted down to temperature, so now we've got to add our dye and our fragrance oil. So first we're going to add our dye. We're going to make these candles red. To do that, we're going to be using a liquid candle dye from Lone Star Candle Supply. Just about any liquid candle dye that you buy is going to have a shade chart on the side of it. Basically, it'll give a color of a particular shade, tell you how many drops per pound you're going to need to achieve that specific shade. So we don't have quite 4 pounds. It tells me I need 3 drops per pound to achieve this specific shade. So we're going to go ahead and add 12 drops. We're going to stir this up a little bit. To do that, you can use pretty much anything. Best bet is to pick something metal. If you pick like a wooden spoon, it is porous, so that wood is going to soak up the dye and the fragrance oil. and can contaminate future batches of candles that you make. So get yourself something small and metal. This is just a simple barbecue skewer. It stirs it really well, plus it's got a very small surface area that's easier to clean. So we're just going to stir this up just a bit. And now we're going to measure out our fragrance oil. Remember from our earlier math, to get our 12% fragrance load, we're going to need 6.4 ounces. For these candles, we're using Blonde Moment by Just Scent, which if you've never experienced, smells absolutely amazing. I would compare it to a like a real sugary cherry perfume type smell. It's going to work out great for these candles. So we're going to take a small glass measuring cup, zero out our scale. Now we're going to pour out our 6.48 ounces of fragrance oil. We went just a tiny bit over, but that's okay. That's not going to hurt anything. So now our wax is at 150 degrees. We've got our dye added. We're ready to go and add our fragrance oil. Going to go ahead and stir it up just a bit. So while that's cooling down, we're going to go ahead and finish getting everything set up and get ready to pour. So we're going to want to make sure that our candles are on a nice flat surface, away from any drafts, pets, kids, spouses, anything that can disturb them while they're setting up and cooling. We want to make sure they're in a nice safe area so that nothing's going to bother them while they're turning into candles. While we do that, one of the most important things we want to consider is how close we actually put them to each other. We don't want to put them just bunched together like this, because what's going to happen, the candle has to cool evenly, otherwise you're going to get imperfections in the top, frosting, all kind of things that can make your candle look ugly. And a major cause of that is the candle's not cooling evenly. What's going to happen is if they're too close together, the centers where they're touching is going to hold in heat, so the outsides are going to cool faster than the center, and that uneven cooling is going to cause your imperfections. So you want to set them at least 2 to 3 inches apart to allow them to cool evenly. And a great way to do that is by using one of these jar boxes. So these are actually made for the canning process, but they work great for our purposes as well because they keep our jars evenly spaced. It's got a nice tray to catch anything that we spill, and if we should have the need to move them somewhere, they're really easy to transport all of our candles at once. So we've got everything set. Our wax and fragrance oil mixture is down to about 110 degrees. So now we can go ahead and transfer to our pouring pitcher and get ready to pour candles. Alright, so one last temperature check. We're right at 102 degrees. It's just about right. Now we're going to go ahead and pour our candles. So we made our final pour. As you can see, we used up exactly what we had, so all of our measurements worked out great at the beginning. So we didn't end up with a bunch of waste. So now all that's left to do is let these sit up and cure and turn into candles. Candles this size are going to take about 4 hours before they're set up enough to take the wick bars off. So we're just going to leave these alone and come back when they're done. So fast forward about 4 hours, our candles are completely dried. Now they're ready to come out of the jar box, trim the wicks, and we're just about ready to finish them up. All right, now we just got to trim the wicks. Let you guys have a look at the top of that one. Look how smooth and pretty they came out. So now we're just going to trim our wicks. Now they're great like this, but if we're going to sell them or give them as gifts, we need to put lids back on them, possibly some labels. Now we can reuse the silver lids that came with them, but if we wanted to get a little bit fancier, they do make some decorative lids. One of the great places to find those is this website right here called Mason Jar Lifestyle. Or if we wanted a plain colored lid to add our own label to, we can head over to avery.com, make our own labels. I just recently did a label making video. If you want to check it out, just follow the link right there. And for those of you that stuck around this long, you're going to be glad you did, because I've got another free tip for you. The Avery template label that fits these 3-inch lids is 94513. So that'll save you a little bit of guesswork, and that's a bonus to everybody that watched the video to the end. Hope you guys enjoyed. That's really all there is to it. If you have any questions or there's something I didn't cover well enough, feel free to ask me in the comments. People always ask me about the different equipment I use. I will leave Amazon links to every single piece of equipment that you saw in the video today. So make sure you check the video description for that. Make sure you guys like and share this video. Turn on your notifications for future updates. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.